As Flight 121 soared through the clouds, the cabin crew bustled about, attending to the needs of the passengers. Among them was Emily, a diligent flight attendant with a warm smile. She had been working for the airline for 5 years and took pride in ensuring every passenger had a pleasant flight. In the economy class section, a tall, imposing figure caught Emily's attention. He was a black man, dressed in an expensive suit, sipping champagne from a flute. Emily noticed he seemed out of place among the other passengers, who were mostly families and budget travelers. As the flight continued, Emily observed the man, whom she later learned was named David, engaging in a heated conversation with a fellow passenger. The discussion appeared intense, with both men gesticulating and raising their voices. Emily's instincts told her to intervene, but she hesitated, unsure of what was happening. Suddenly, the passenger David was talking to stormed off to the lavatory, leaving David looking frazzled. Emily approached him, concerned. "Sir, is everything okay?" she asked. David looked up, his eyes flashing with anger. "No, everything is not okay," he replied curtly. That man was being extremely rude and racist. Emily's expression turned sympathetic. "I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. However, I did notice that you seemed to be arguing with him. Could you tell me more about what happened?" David's expression darkened. "I don't see why I need to explain myself to you. You're just a flight attendant. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in this world." Emily felt a surge of defensiveness, but she tried to remain calm. "Sir, I'm just trying to understand the situation. I want to help." David's voice rose. "You want to help? You want to help? You don't even know what's going on. You're just like all the others, assuming the worst about me because of the color of my skin." The cabin fell silent, with all eyes on the confrontation. Emily's face grew hot with embarrassment and frustration. She didn't know what to say or do. In a split second, she made a decision. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down and respect the other passengers. Your behavior is disrupting the flight." David's face turned red with rage. "You're kicking me off the plane. You're kicking me off the plane because of the color of my skin." Emily stood firm, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sir, that's not what I said. I'm just asking you to calm down and respect the other passengers." The scene escalated, with David shouting at Emily and the other passengers staring in shock. Finally, the pilot's voice came over the intercom, asking Emily to resolve the situation. With a heavy heart, Emily called for security to escort David off the plane. As he was led away, he turned to Emily and spat, "You'll regret this. You'll regret this." The flight continued, but the atmosphere was tense. Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that she had made a mistake. Had she misjudged David? Had she been too quick to assume the worst about him? As the plane landed and the passengers disembarked, Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She couldn't wait to get home and forget about the whole ordeal. But as she was leaving the airport, she was approached by a woman who introduced herself as David's lawyer. "You're the flight attendant who had my client removed from the plane, aren't you?" she asked. Emily nodded, feeling a sense of trepidation. "Yes, that's right." The lawyer smiled. "Well, I have some news that might interest you. David was actually a victim of racial profiling on that flight. The man he was arguing with was a racist who had been harassing him throughout the flight." Emily's eyes widened in shock. "Oh no, I had no idea." The lawyer nodded. "Yes, and to make matters worse, David is a prominent businessman who was on his way to an important meeting. Your actions caused him to miss that meeting and suffer significant financial losses." Emily felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She had made a terrible mistake. She had assumed the worst about David without knowing the facts. "What can I do to make it right?" she asked the lawyer. The lawyer smiled. "Well, for starters, you can apologize to David and acknowledge that you made a mistake. And then, you can work with us to ensure that something like this never happens again." Emily nodded, feeling a sense of determination. She would do everything in her power to make things right. She would learn from her mistake and become a better. Emily spent the next few days in a daze, replaying the events of the flight over and over in her head. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. She had judged David based on her own biases and assumptions, without taking the time to understand the situation. Finally, she worked up the courage to contact David's lawyer and ask to meet with him. She wanted to apologize and make amends. The meeting was arranged, and Emily arrived at David's office feeling nervous and anxious. When David walked in, she was struck by his dignified presence. He was even more imposing in person, but his eyes were kind and understanding. "Mr. David, I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for what happened on the flight, Emily said, her voice shaking. I was wrong to assume the worst about you, and I was wrong to have you removed from the plane. I realize now that I was blinded by my own biases and assumptions. David listened to Emily's apology, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for apologizing, Emily, he said. It takes a lot of courage to admit when we're wrong. But I have to ask, what made you assume the worst about me? Emily took a deep breath and tried to explain. I think it was a combination of things, she said. I had never seen anyone like you on a flight before. You were dressed in an expensive suit, and you seemed confident and self-assured. I think I assumed that you were somehow above the other passengers, and that you were being arrogant and dismissive. David nodded thoughtfully. I see, he said. And what do you think now? Emily hesitated, unsure of how to respond. But then she looked into David's eyes and saw something there that gave her the courage to be honest. I think I was wrong, she said. I think I let my own biases and assumptions cloud my judgment. And I think I need to do better in the future. David smiled, and for the first time, Emily saw a glimmer of warmth in his eyes. I think you're on the right track, Emily, he said. And I appreciate your willingness to listen and learn. Can I ask, what do you plan to do differently in the future? Emily thought for a moment before responding. I plan to be more mindful of my own biases and assumptions, she said. I plan to take the time to listen and understand the situation before making judgments. And I plan to be more empathetic and compassionate towards others. David nodded, a look of approval on his face. I think that's a great start, Emily, he said. And I'm willing to help you on that journey. Would you be interested in attending a workshop on cultural sensitivity and unconscious bias? Emily's eyes widened in surprise. Really? You'd be willing to help me? David smiled. Of course, he said. I believe that we all have the capacity to grow and learn. And I think that with a little effort, we can all become better versions of ourselves. Emily left the meeting feeling hopeful and inspired. She knew that she still had a lot to learn, but she was grateful for the opportunity to grow and improve. And she was thankful to David for being willing to help her on that journey. Over the next few weeks, Emily attended the workshop on cultural sensitivity and unconscious bias. She learned about the ways in which her own biases and assumptions could impact her interactions with others, and she began to develop strategies for recognizing and overcoming those biases. David, who had become a mentor to Emily, checked in with her regularly to see how she was progressing. He offered her guidance and support, and he encouraged her to keep working towards her goals. As Emily continued to learn and grow, she began to notice changes in the way she interacted with others. She was more patient and understanding, and she was better able to navigate difficult situations. One day, Emily was working on a flight when a passenger became upset and began to yell at her. In the past, Emily might have become defensive and argumentative, but this time, she remained calm and empathetic. I understand that you're upset, sir, she said. Can you tell me more about what's bothering you? The passenger, who had been expecting a fight, was taken aback by Emily's calm demeanor. He explained his concerns, and Emily listened attentively. When he finished, Emily apologized for any inconvenience he had experienced and offered to help resolve the issue. The passenger, who had been on the verge of becoming violent, began to calm down. Thank you for listening to me, he said. I appreciate it. Emily smiled and nodded. You're welcome, sir, she said. I'm here to help. As the flight continued, Emily couldn't help but think about how far she had come. She had learned to recognize and overcome her own biases and assumptions, and she had become a better, more empathetic person. When the flight landed, Emily was approached by the passenger she had helped earlier. I just wanted to say thank you again for your help, he said. You're a great flight attendant, and I appreciate your kindness. Emily smiled and thanked him. As she watched him walk away, she felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. She had made a positive impact on someone's life, and she had proven to herself that she was capable of growth and change. David, who had been watching from the sidelines, approached Emily with a smile. I'm proud of you, Emily, he said. You've come a long way, and you're making a real difference in the world. Emily smiled, feeling grateful for David's guidance and support. Thank you, David, she said. I couldn't have done it without you. As Emily walked away, she felt a sense of hope and optimism. She knew that she still had challenges ahead of her, but she was ready to face them head on. She had learned the value of empathy and understanding, and she was determined to make a positive impact on the world.